Alright guys, welcome back to Underground Science, and here we'll pick off from where we left from in the part 1 video of aldosterone production in the zona glomerulosa, or the first layer of the adrenal cortex. Alright, and so what's going to happen now is that in the previous video we looked at what happens when adrenocorticotropic hormone binds, right, how the G-stimulatory pathway eventually makes protein kinase A, and we said protein kinase A will later phosphorylate certain reactions that lead to the production of aldosterone, all right? Now let's see what happens when another first messenger, like adrenocorticotropic hormone, what happens when another first messenger or ligand binds to another G protein coupled receptor present somewhere on this membrane of the zona glomerulosa cell. All right, so we have another cell membrane cut out here. So it turns out that we have another mechanism, right, that affects the production of aldosterone, that increases the production of aldosterone, and it ends up making another kinase enzyme like protein kinase A, except it's not protein kinase A. And so let's go and see how this works. So let's go and say we have our receptor here, right? I don't know what kind of receptor that is, but just somehow like draw a cool receptor. So let's go and draw our G protein coupled receptor, and let's go and see what happens. Okay, so like ACTH, we have another very influensive, you could say, first messenger that's gonna pretty much cause the intracellular cell it's gonna be much more effective than ACTH. All right, so it's gonna affect the production of aldosterone much more. And this first messenger that's gonna bind here is gonna be called angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2. Now, what the heck's angiotensin 2, right? So in the future videos, in a future video or in a future playlist, when we look at the kidneys, we'll talk about the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, or the RAS system. But right now, let's just talk about the basic idea, quickly overview of how angiotensin 2 is produced. So when we have low blood pressure, our kidneys detect that, right? And we'll talk about in specific where, like near our juxtaglomerular cells, right? Or in our juxtaglomerular cells. Well, those cells will actually, in the kidney, right, will detect low blood pressure. It's going to sense the low blood pressure. So what it's going to do is that the kidneys itself is going to release an enzyme known as renin. So it's going to write this down. So the kidneys, let's see how all of this works. So the kidneys will produce an enzyme that's called renin in response to the detection of low blood pressure. Then our liver, right, our amazing liver, will then also produce a molecule or a compound, right, a zymogen called angiotensinogen. All right, so it's going to produce a zymogen called angiotensinogen. Now, this angiotensinogen is the inactive form of angiotensin 1 because it's a zymogen. Then the renin is going to act like an enzyme and is going to turn this angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1. So now we're going to have a molecule called angiotensin 1. All right, and the renin with the help of renin. Now, near our lungs, or our lungs in general, will produce a enzyme called angiotensin converting enzyme. All right, so then our lungs will come into play, right? So our lungs here will come into play, and our lungs will secrete an enzyme called angiotensin converting enzyme. Angiotensin converting enzyme will then convert angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. All right, so angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. And this is the angiotensin 2 that will bind to the zona glomerulosa cell membrane on a G protein coupled receptor, and then will initiate its effect inside the cell and play a huge role in producing aldosterone. All right, so angiotensin 2 will then eventually lead to, will eventually lead to the production of aldosterone via our zona glomerulosa. Aldosterone, all right? So that's how angiotensin 2 came here. Now, when angiotensin 2 binds, we don't have a G-stimulatory protein reaction like we did with adrenocorticotropic hormone. We have a GQ protein here, not a G-stimulatory protein. So it turns out we have so let me draw this a little bigger, you'll see why. We have a GQ protein here that's part of the alpha complex, all right? Because we also have a beta complex and we also have a gamma complex, all right? But the important part is this GQ alpha complex. So once angiotensin 2 binds, we have the same mechanism here where GDP keeps it inactive, keeps the GQ protein inactive. Once angiotensin 2 binds, there's going to be a GTP conversion that's going to bind to the GQ protein. It's going to turn the GQ protein active and mobile. The GQ protein, the alpha subunit, is going to dissociate from the beta and the gamma subunit and is eventually going to go find an enzyme called phospholipase C. Again, I'll try to shorten it up so we can save time, right? But if you need a refresher on this PIP2, IP3 DAG pathway, go and check out my video on that. So this GQ protein will dissociate and we'll find an enzyme called phospholipase C. All right, so it's going to on the cell membrane. So it's going to find an enzyme that's present here, right, called phospholipase C. So phospholipase C, then it turns out phospholipase C will then get activated and it's going to break a molecule, or it's going to cleave a molecule called phosphatidylinositol 4,5-biphosphate, or also known as PIP2, which is also present on the membrane about right here. So phospholipase C will then act on this PIP2 protein, and it's going to turn this PIP2 protein into a inositol 1,4,5-triphosphate molecule, and it's going to turn it into a 1,2-diacylglycerol molecule, or DAG, right? The DAG turns out to be hydrophobic. So the DAG is going to then bind, it's going to be bound to the cell membrane, the phospholipid bilayer. However, the IP3 is hydrophilic, so the IP3 will then, the inositol 1,4,5-triphosphate will then lead to calcium influx into the cell from the endoplasmic reticulum, right? And the calcium, so it'll lead to calcium influx into the cell, or it's technically going to be calcium efflux out of the endoplasmic reticulum into the cell. And both calcium and DAG will then go ahead and activate this enzyme right here, or not right here, but eventually it's going to lead to an activation of an enzyme called protein kinase C, all right? So not protein kinase A like adrenocorticotropic hormone did. It's going to be protein kinase C. And then now protein kinase C will then go and phosphorylate along with protein kinase A that adrenocorticotropic hormone resulted in. The binding of adrenocorticotropic hormone, remember, resulted in protein kinase A. Protein kinase A and protein kinase C, right, will then go ahead and help phosphorylate the reactions that will occur in order to produce aldosterone. So we also have, remember, protein kinase A here because of our adrenocorticotropic hormone that will also phosphorylate certain reactions that will lead up to the production of aldosterone. All right, so let's go and write that down. So phosphorylate certain reactions that will lead to the production of our awesome hormone called aldosterone. All right, so now that we got our angiotensin 2 mechanism and our adrenocorticotropic mechanism on the cell membrane of the zona glomerulosa, right, involving our phosphatidylinositol 4,5-biphosphate, or PIP2 for angiotensin 2, and our inositol 1,4,5-triphosphate, our DAG, or our diacylglycerol, right, 1,2-diacylglycerol, and all these amazing steps that we got. Now in the next video, we'll look at what happens, or how aldosterone is produced through a few important enzymes, and how cholesterol leads to the production of aldosterone. All right, so aldosterone is not. Ooh, that's another good thing to mention. Aldosterone is not a peptide hormone. All right, aldosterone is a steroid hormone because it's derived from cholesterol. All right, so that's a good thing to know for the next video. All right, so that's it for this video. Hope this video made sense to you guys. Make sure to tune into my future videos. We'll talk about more cool topics about biochem, chem, and physics. And make sure to tune into my next video, right, or a future video that I'll make about what happens next. All right, so see you guys later. Hit that notification bell, like and subscribe, and stay safe.